In this video, I'm going to break down the 4 biggest mindset leaks that keep poker players stuck and the exact skills you need to learn to fix them. Poker will break you if you don't learn these skills. It doesn't matter how good your strategy knowledge is. If your mindset can't handle the pressure, the variance, and the emotional swings, you'll never play your best poker consistently. That's the painful truth most poker players learn the hard way. They study the game for hours, but in real situations, they crumble under emotions, self-doubt, and variance. And maybe you felt that too. How do you stay confident when you're stuck on a downswing? How do you keep emotions from hijacking your play? How do you silence self-doubt when nothing is going your way? If this sounds like you, you're not alone. I've worked with hundreds of poker players, and I've seen these exact same patterns hold players back again and again. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 4 biggest poker mindset leaks. You'll be able to identify your own biggest leak, see how it's holding you back, and most importantly, learn the skill you need to finally fix it. By the end, you'll have a clear framework for building a mindset that allows you to perform at your best under pressure and finally start playing your best poker. Now, before we dive in, just a quick announcement. I've reopened my Poker Athlete program for the first time this year. If you want to work directly with me to build a bulletproof poker mindset, applications are now open, but they close this week. The program starts next Monday with the first live coaching session. Okay, now let's dive in. The first mindset leak is what I call the identity ceiling. This is where you get trapped in the story of what you think is possible for yourself. You start believing you've reached your limit, that maybe you don't have what it takes to play higher. Deep down, you doubt yourself and where you belong. Here is how to know if you might have this leak. You feel capable of more, but hold yourself back. You self-sabotage yourself when things are going well, or you hesitate to take shots, even when you are rolled for them. The identity ceiling often shows up as hesitation. You doubt yourself, play it safe, and never fully commit. The painful truth is that this leak doesn't just cost you buy-ins, it costs you years. You never really test your limits. You never really find out how good you could be. And the worst part, it's not because you weren't capable, it's because you never really put the work in to find out. I remember when I hit my identity ceiling during my poker career. I was playing mid-stakes, $300 heads-up sit and goes. I started to look at the higher lobbies and tell myself that the players above me must be so much better, so much more experienced, almost unbeatable. And because of this story, because I believed it, I stopped myself even trying to play those games. I became a rakeback grinder, playing supernova late volume in order to hit my mid-stakes goals, but really, I was scared. I was scared to find out if I was good enough to go higher. So years of my career went by without even finding out. So, how do you break through an identity ceiling? The skill you need to work on is self-awareness. Now, self-awareness works with 3 key stages. The first is to question your beliefs. You need to spot and upgrade the stories that tell you you aren't good enough, that you can't make it work, that you don't have what it takes. The second step is to align with your values. You need to build a life and the habits that align with the things that are most important to you. And the third phase is to cultivate a 2.0 identity, to step into a new version of you who can achieve your goals, play higher stakes, and embody that version of you right now. When you train self-awareness, you close the gap between who you are right now and who you need to become. Instead of living in the old stories that keep you trapped, you start living in a new story that has you think about the future and showing up as your best version right now. This is the first skill I teach my poker athletes, and it's the foundation for everything else. But even if you do break through the identity ceiling and start believing in yourself, there's another danger waiting. Because the moment you sit down to play, emotions can hijack everything. So the second mindset leak is what I'm going to call the tilt trap. This is when your emotions take control of your decisions at the poker tables. One bad beat, one mistake, or an aggressive opponent, and suddenly you're not thinking about the strategy. You're reacting. Here's how to know if you have this leak. You make reckless calls or bluffs to avoid the feeling of being pushed around. You rush decisions to escape the uncertainty of tough spots. Or you find yourself making plays that are hard to justify when you look at them later. The tilt trap pulls you out of logic and into reaction. When your emotional state is compromised, it doesn't just cost you a buy-in. If you don't catch it, it can easily wipe out a whole week's profits. And the more it happens, the more you reinforce the belief that you can't control yourself. To highlight this, I want to share the story of one of my students. He's a very well-respected MTT player, the type of player all his friends go to ask for hand history advice. But in-game, he was struggling against aggressive opponents. When somebody 3-bet him light or check-raised him too often, he would go into a very primal state. He felt like he was being attacked. He would say things like, "Why is he trying to push me around? I need to stand up for myself. This would trigger anger, and he started to fight fire with fire, bluffing off stacks and calling down too light. Deep runs would turn to nothing, not because he didn't have the skill, but because his emotions hijacked him. So to escape the tilt trap, you need to develop the skill of emotional regulation. There are 3 key steps you need to work through. The first is building emotional awareness. You need to notice the emotions as they arise and label them before they escalate. The second step is to identify the triggers. Know the spots, the thoughts, and the opponents that set you off. And the third step is to change your response. You need to reframe how you're seeing the situation. In the case of my students, that aggression wasn't personal, that it was just poker. Once my student learned to drop the label of being pushed around, the emotion lost its grip. He stopped reacting, trusted his reads, and could fold big hands without feeling like he was backing down. Emotional regulation isn't about never feeling emotions, it's about not letting them interfere with your decision making. Now, learning to overcome tilt is a key obstacle, but sometimes downswings last a long time. Sometimes they don't just affect your bankroll, they start to chip away at your belief in yourself, which leads to the third mindset leak, the confidence crash. This is when the voice of self-doubt starts to get really loud. You start to question if you've got what it takes. Poker is a game of variance. You can do everything right and lose for weeks at a time. But when you're unprepared for adversity, these stretches don't just test you, they break you. Here's how to know if you have this leak. You feel surprised almost every time variance hits, as if it shouldn't happen to you. You change your grind or your routine drastically during downswings. You either chase losses with marathon sessions, or you avoid playing altogether. The confidence crash turns poker into an emotional roller coaster. Your discipline slips, your decision-making weakens, and instead of getting stronger through adversity, you spiral into self-doubt. Here's the brutal truth I've seen too often. Downswings can make or break your poker career. I've seen talented poker players disappear, not because they didn't have the skill, but because they couldn't handle a brutal downswing. I want to share with you the story of 2 of my students to show the difference it can make. One of my poker athlete students recently went through the biggest downswing of his poker career. 3 brutal months of losing almost every day. But instead of panicking, he doubled down on what he could control. He stuck to his routine, he studied, and he kept showing up. A few weeks later, that downswing ended, and he was a better player at the end of it. Another student reacted differently. He abandoned his routines, skipped studying, and chased losses with some marathon late-night sessions. What started as a few weeks of bad variance spiraled into months of self-inflicted damage. Downswings don't define you, your response does. So to recover from the confidence crash, you need a new skill: resilience. There are 3 key steps here. The first is to see adversity as training. You shift from fragile to anti-fragile by seeing every downswing as an opportunity to improve, to grow, and to get better. The second step is to train toughness deliberately. You need to learn to step outside of your comfort zone, to do hard things on a regular basis, and to prove to yourself when things get tough, you will continue to show up. And the third step is to create a battle plan. Prepare yourself for sessions to get tough. Remind yourself of that during play, and reflect after how all setbacks can be used to make you stronger. With resilience, variance doesn't weaken you, it forges you. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, you become the type of player who thrives under pressure. When things get tough, so do you. Resilience can keep you strong through the toughest downswings. But even resilient players fall into one last trap, obsessing too much over short-term results. And that brings us to the final mindset leak. The fourth mindset leak is what I call the short-term spiral. This is when you zoom in too closely on short-term results and let variance dictate your mindset. A bad day, a rough week, a few unlucky flips, and suddenly you're questioning everything about your game. Here's how to know if you have this leak. You obsess over your daily or weekly graphs. You draw big conclusions from tiny samples. You take variance personally, as if the deck is against you. Now, the short-term spiral doesn't just affect your mood, it affects your behavior. You avoid playing to protect your role, or you bury yourself in studying to try and find some leaks. Instead of building consistency, you get trapped in cycles of overanalyzing and doubt. But here's the thing, when you zoom in too narrowly, variance always looks chaotic and overwhelming. But over months and years, your skill shines through. Yet if you let short-term results control you, you'll never let your true edge play out. One of my students went through this recently. After a rough week, he stopped playing and was convinced he had a major leak that was causing him to lose. He did a deep dive in his game, trying to find what was causing him to lose. Sure enough, he found lots of small mistakes, but nothing that justified this panic. The problem wasn't his strategy, it was his perspective. He was looking at a tiny sample and drawing the wrong conclusion. Had he zoomed out and looked at his results over a longer time frame, like 6 months, he would have seen the clearer view that he had a great win rate and there was no real need to panic. So to escape the short-term spiral, you need to develop the skill of perspective. There are 3 key things to focus on. The first is learn to zoom out, to see the bigger picture, to not let the short-term swings create a story in your mind that leads you to panic. The second is to detach from outcomes. Learn to focus on what you control and to value your decision-making process rather than whether you won or lost. And the third phase is to learn to shift the lens you see life through, to reframe situations, and to challenge your biases so that you can always see the bigger picture. When you train perspective, variance loses its grip. You stop riding the emotional waves of daily results and start building calm consistency, the mindset that allows your skill to show over the long term. Perspective is the final piece of the puzzle. So you've now seen all 4 mindset leaks. So let's bring them together. The 4 biggest poker mindset leaks are 1, the identity ceiling, doubting if you belong or have what it takes. Number 2, the tilt trap, letting emotions hijack your play. Number 3, the confidence crash, downswings breaking your belief and leading to self-doubt. And 4th, the short-term spiral, getting too attached to variance and short-term results. Even one of these leaks is enough to completely hold back your poker career. But when you train the 4 key skills of self-awareness, emotional regulation, resilience, and perspective, you don't just patch your leaks. You build a bulletproof mindset, a mindset that can handle anything that poker throws your way. That's exactly what we do inside the Poker Athlete program. Now, if you would like to spend some time training these skills, to working on them with myself and other poker players, to train them to a point that they are strength of yours for the rest of your poker career, I invite you to join my Poker Athlete program. I've opened applications for the rest of the week. You can click on the link in the description to apply for one of those now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up before you go and let me know in the comments if any of these leaks resonate with you.